Welcome to our exploration of a fascinating logical paradox in Talmudic law found in Chullin 25a-b through Amud Beit. Today we'll investigate a remarkable inconsistency in the laws of ritual purity, one that leads us deep into the reasoning systems of the Talmud. This shugya demonstrates how the Chachamim, the sages, don't just state rules, but construct sophisticated legal frameworks built on competing principles. Let's begin our journey from paradox to principle. The Mishna opens with a striking statement that seems almost designed to confuse us. It declares, that which is ritually pure in clay etz, wooden vessels, is ritually impure in clay matechot, metal vessels. That which is ritually pure in clay matechot, metal vessels, is ritually impure in clay etz, wooden vessels. This is a perfect inversion. The rules of Torah, purity, and tum'ah, impurity, are completely reversed depending on the material. A wooden bowl that is tahor, pure, would be tameh, impure, if made of metal. A metal cup that is tahor, pure, would be tameh, impure, if made of wood. How can the fundamental categories of purity be so radically different for two types of vessels? This is our puzzle. The Gemara offers an initial resolution. The paradox dissolves when we realize the Mishna is comparing different categories. For wooden vessels, it contrasts gelmei clay etz, unfinished receptacles, with pshutehen, flat utensils. For metal vessels, it contrasts gelmei clay matechot, unfinished receptacles, with pshutehen, flat utensils. Here's the key insight. An unfinished wooden receptacle, even though it still needs work, smoothing, decorating, or polishing, is already susceptible to tum'ah, to impurity, because it can function as a kli, a vessel. But a flat wooden utensil, lacking the capacity to hold anything, is tahor, pure, not because it's clean, but because it cannot become ritually impure at all. Metal vessels work in reverse. An unfinished metal receptacle is tahor, pure, until its crafting is completely finished. But a flat metal utensil is susceptible to tum'ah, to impurity. So the Mishnah wasn't comparing the same categories at all. It was referring to gelmei in one clause and pshutehen in the other. This neat solution, however, uncovers a deeper, more fundamental question. The initial explanation solves the paradox, but reveals a new inconsistency. Now we must ask, why are gelmei, unfinished vessels, treated in opposite ways? For wooden vessels, the rule is, gelmei clay etz tamein, unfinished wooden receptacles are tameh, impure. They are susceptible to ritual impurity, even though their aesthetic finishing is incomplete. For metal vessels, the rule is, gelmei clay matechot torin, unfinished metal receptacles are tahor, pure. They are not susceptible to ritual impurity until their crafting is 100% finished. This is bizarre. Why does halacha, the law, consider an unfinished wooden receptacle a kli, a vessel, but an unfinished metal one not? Both can hold things. Both function as receptacles. What principle could justify treating them so differently? Let's examine the governing principle for wooden vessels more carefully. A wooden vessel is susceptible to tum'ah, to impurity, as long as it can function as a receptacle, even if its aesthetic finishing is incomplete. What counts as incomplete but impure? The Gemara provides a detailed list. A wooden vessel that is lacking smoothing, shuf, lacking inlaid gems or ornaments, shibutz, lacking planing, gerira, lacking decorative grooves, krikuv, lacking a final rubbing with the skin of a fish called tunas, tuna, lacking a base, a rim, or a handle. All of these vessels are still considered kelim, vessels, and they are therefore susceptible to tum'ah. The diagram shows what this might look like: a wooden bowl with rough surfaces, missing its decorative elements, lacking its final polish. It's clearly unfinished aesthetically. Yet halacha declares, Tameh, ITCN become ritually impure. But there is one exception. A wooden object is considered tahor, pure, only if it is fundamentally incomplete as a receptacle. The key concept is machusar chatita, lacking hollowing. Imagine a vessel intended to hold one kav, approximately 2.2 liters. Even if someone has already hollowed out half its capacity, a kafiza, the vessel is still legally considered lacking hollowing. Why? Because its primary function, to hold one kav, is incomplete. Since its primary function is a receptacle is incomplete, it is tahor, pure. Not because it's ritually clean, but because it doesn't yet have the legal status of a kli, a vessel. This is a critical distinction. A wooden vessel becomes susceptible to tuma the moment ITCN function as a receptacle, regardless of whether its aesthetic work is complete. Now let's turn to metal vessels, where the principle is entirely different. A metal vessel is considered incomplete, and therefore tahor, pure, until its crafting is 100% finished. Even if ITCN hold things, it is not legally a kli, a vessel. What counts as incomplete and pure for metal? The list is similar but with a crucial difference: lacking smoothing, shuf, lacking inlaid gems, shibutz, lacking planing or adornment, gerira or krikur, lacking a final hammer strike, called korenas, kornas, the final blow that completes the metalworking, lacking a base, a rim, or a handle. The diagram illustrates an elegant metal goblet, clearly capable of holding liquid, yet still missing its final smoothing, its decorative gems, its final hammer strike. According to halacha, this vessel is tahor, pure, it cannot become ritually impure. There's one notable exception. If the vessel itself is complete but is only lacking a cover, then it is tameh, impure. The cover is considered a separate accessory, not part of the vessel's essence. We've now documented the facts. But we must ask the fundamental question: why this difference? Why does halacha demand absolute perfection for a metal vessel, but accept mere functionality for a wooden one? Both materials CN function as vessels. Both CN hold food and drink. Yet the law treats them according to completely different standards. This isn't just a technical distinction. It reflects a deep philosophical question about what makes something a kli, a vessel, in the eyes of Jewish law. Is it function? Is it completion? Is it something else entirely? The Gemara records two competing explanations, each offered by a different Amora, a sage of the Talmudic period. Rabbi Yochanan says, Ho'il v'lichvod asuin, since they are made for honor. Metal vessels are crafted for honorable purposes like ceremony or display. They are not considered legally vessels until they are aesthetically perfect and complete. Until that moment, they lack the dignity that defines their purpose. Rav Nachman offers a different principle: Ho'il udmehen yekarim, since their value is expensive. Metal vessels are expensive. Therefore, market value is realized only when perfectly finished. An unfinished metal object is legally akin to raw material, not a GGH vessel. These are not merely two ways of saying the same thing. They are two distinct legal theories about what defines the status of a kli in halacha. The Gemara asks, Mai beinayahu, what is the practical difference between these two opinions? When would they disagree? The test case is klei etzem, vessels crafted from animal horns or hooves. These bone vessels have two key characteristics. First, in terms of value, they are expensive, like metal. Horn and bone vessels were valuable commodities in the ancient world. Second, in terms of purpose, they are not made for honor. Unlike silver ceremonial cups, bone vessels were utilitarian. So, according to Rav Nachman, the principle of value, bone vessels should be treated like metal. They should be tahor, pure, when unfinished. According to Rabbi Yochanan, the principle of honor, bone vessels should be treated like wood. They should be tameh, impure, when unfinished but functional. The answer to this test case will reveal whether honor or value is the determinative principle. The Gemara now delivers its verdict. Rav Nachman explicitly states, Klei etzem ki klei matechot de'amu, the halachi status of bone vessels with regard to impurity is like that of metal vessels. This is decisive. Bone vessels, despite not being made for honor, follow the metal vessel rule. They are tahor, pure, when unfinished. Why? Because they are expensive. The conclusion is clear. The value principle emerges as the operative one. It is not aesthetic honor that determines when an object becomes a kli in halacha. It is economic value. An expensive material demands completion before the law recognizes it as a vessel worthy of the status that makes it susceptible to tumah. But wait. Before we see and fully accept this conclusion, we must verify a foundational assumption. Is it even true that bone vessels are susceptible to ritual impurity? If they're not, then our entire test case collapses. The Gemara addresses this directly. Yes, it is derived from a biblical verse through rabbinic interpretation. In Sefer Bamidbar, the book of Numbers, chapter Tijildvoni, verse 20, we read, V'chal maaseh izim titchatiyahu, and all work of goats, you shall purify. This interpretation is taught by Rabbi Ishmael bno shel Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka, Rabbi Ishmael, the son of Rabbi Yekanan ben Beraka. The verse establishes that items made from goats, specifically from their horns and hooves, are subject to the laws of ritual purity. Rabbi Ishmael performs a careful textual analysis of this pasuk, this verse. The verse states, V'chal maaseh izim, and all work of goats. First interpretation, the phrase maaseh izim, work of goats, is interpreted to include items derived from goats, specifically their horns and hooves. These become kelim that sien contract tumah. Second interpretation, the word kol, all, serves to extend this rule to the horns and hooves of other domesticated and undomesticated animals. It's not just goats, it's cattle, sheep, deer, and any other animal with horns or hooves. Third interpretation, but if kol, all, already includes everything, why does the pasuk specifically mention izim, goats? This specificity serves to exclude a category, vessels made from the bones of a foot, birds. Bird bones cannot contract ritual impurity. This brilliant exegesis demonstrates the precision of rabbinic interpretation, extracting multiple legal principles from a single phrase. Let's step back and review the structure of this Talmudic argument, because it reveals something profound about how halacha works. The puzzle, we began with a paradox of purity between wood and metal vessels stated in the Mishna. The investigation, we discovered the key distinction was the gelmei, unfinished, state, which revealed a deeper question about why the law treats the two materials differently. The theories, we analyzed two competing principles proposed by the Chachamim, the principle of honor from Rabbi Yochanan and the principle of value from Rav Nachman. The verdict, a test case of bone vessels, expensive but not for honor, revealed that value is the determinative principle, a conclusion grounded in biblical interpretation. This shugya shows us that Talmudic law is not a static list of rules. It is a dynamic and coherent system built through rigorous questioning, competing theories, and TXTBCD reasoning. Our journey through Masechet Chullin reveals something essential about Talmudic thought. Abstract concepts like honor and value are not mere philosophy. They are functional legal principles with tangible consequences, tested and refined through specific cases to build a consistent and predictable world. The goal of the Gemara is not just to know the rule, it's to understand the reason. Why does a wooden bowl become a kli when it can hold water, while a silver cup needs its final polish? Because value demands completion. Because expensive materials are not considered finished goods until they achieve their full worth. This method of reasoning, moving from apparent contradiction to underlying principle, is the heartbeat of Talmudic logic. It transforms legal study into an intellectual and spiritual pursuit, where every detail reflects a deeper truth about how Kadosh Baruch wants us to structure the world with precision, meaning, and justice.